History has a rhythm, a blueprint for destruction. Over the last 500 years, three global superpowers, Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union, all followed the same pattern, step by step, decision by decision, until their collapse became inevitable. And what's chilling is that today the United States seems to be following that exact same path. It is almost like we were reading from the same script that doomed every empire before us. Let's rewind to 1590, Spain, the richest empire on earth. They controlled half the world's gold and silver. Their armies were unmatched in Europe, and their currency was the global standard. Sounds familiar, right? Yet, within just 80 years, Spain was bankrupt. They became a secondary power, a shadow of their former glory, never to return to the world stage in the same way. Now, fast forward to 1914, Britain, the empire on which the sun never set. The pound sterling was the king of global finance. Their navy ruled the seas. But by 1950, the empire was gone. Debts had piled sky high, and Britain had become America's junior partner, its global dominance a thing of the past. Then, there's a more recent memory. 1991, the Soviet Union. A nuclear superpower with satellites circling the globe and influence that spanned continents. It seemed invincible. Yet, in just 900 days, it completely ceased to exist. It wasn't defeated in a war, it imploded from within due to economic failure. 3 empires. 3 spectacular collapses. And each time, the same sequence of events played out. What's truly alarming? When you look at the United States today, we've already passed 5 of the 7 critical stages in this historical pattern. We're not just approaching this cycle of decline, we are deep within it, following a well-trodden path. The question isn't if history will repeat itself, but whether we're already living in the final act. We need to understand these stages to see where we're headed. What does imperial collapse actually look like? It's not what you see in the movies. Forget the dramatic scenes of tanks rolling across borders or capital cities burning. The real collapse begins much more quietly. It starts from within, with economics. Think about it. Empires, by their very nature, overextend. They get involved in too many conflicts, fighting wars on multiple fronts simultaneously. They make grand promises to their citizens and allies, promises they eventually can't afford to keep. Debt starts to pile up, growing larger and larger, almost unnoticed at first. On the surface, everything seems fine. The currency is still accepted, the military is still winning battles, and the government appears to be functioning normally. But beneath that calm exterior, the cracks are widening. Resources are being wasted or sent to the wrong places. Economic productivity starts to shrink. The most talented and innovative people, the brightest minds, start to leave, seeking better opportunities elsewhere. Then, almost overnight, what once were sources of strength become critical vulnerabilities. Allies who once depended on you start to hedge their bets, looking for new partners. Enemies, sensing weakness, begin to test your boundaries. Your trading partners start exploring alternatives, reducing their reliance on you. The currency that was once demanded all over the world starts flooding back home, causing massive inflation. Those military commitments, once a sign of global power, are now spread dangerously thin. The promises that were once guaranteed by unquestioned authority become nothing more than empty words. This isn't just a theory, it's a historical pattern. It happened to the Spanish Empire, the British Empire, and the Soviet Union. And every single time, the story began the same way, with a series of decisions made by leaders who were convinced they could never fail. Let's look at Spain, the original blueprint for this kind of collapse. After Columbus's voyages, Spain conquered the Aztec and Inca empires, gaining control of the richest gold and silver mines the world had ever seen. By the year 1600, they were shipping over 400 tons of silver back to Europe annually. They literally controlled the continent's money supply. But this incredible wealth was a double-edged sword. It blinded them to the dangers ahead. First came military overextension. Spain was fighting wars on 4 different continents, against the Ottoman Empire, against France, against Protestant rebels in the Netherlands, against England, and in their colonies in the Philippines and the Americas. At its peak, half of all of Spain's revenue was spent on the military. And even that wasn't enough. This led directly to the next stage, currency debasement. Unable to pay its bills and fund its wars, the Spanish crown started diluting its famous silver coins with cheaper metals like copper. The value of the currency plummeted. Inflation skyrocketed. Soon, merchants and foreign powers began refusing to accept Spanish coins, recognizing they were no longer worth their face value. The economic engine of the empire began to sputter and die, long before its borders officially shrank. Have you ever wondered how mighty empires crumble? It's a pattern, a cycle, and it's happened again and again throughout history. Let's look at 3 giants and see how they fell. First, Spain in the 16th century. Flush with silver from the New World, they seemed unstoppable. But this wealth became a curse. Spain entered a debt spiral, declaring bankruptcy 4 times in 40 years. each time borrowing more while promising reforms that never came. With endless silver, why bother making anything? Their own agriculture and manufacturing withered. Wealth poured out of the country to buy foreign goods. As the economy stagnated, society began to decay, crime soared, the brightest minds left, and Spain lost control of valuable territories like Portugal and the Netherlands. By 1700, the once great empire was just a shadow of its former self. Next, let's jump to the British Empire. In 1914, the sun truly never set on their territory, covering a quarter of the globe. The pound sterling was the world's currency. But the same pattern emerged. Defending a global empire was expensive. World War I cost Britain a fortune, mostly borrowed from the United States. After the war, they tried to peg the pound to gold at its old pre-war value. This was a disaster. British exports became too expensive, manufacturing declined, and unemployment skyrocketed. Then came World War II, adding even more debt. By 1945, Britain owed more money than its entire economy was worth. The empire began to unravel. India, nations across Africa and Southeast Asia all gained independence. The pound, once mighty, collapsed in value. The global superpower became a regional power. Finally, the Soviet Union. After World War II, it was a superpower, rivaling the US with nuclear weapons and a global sphere of influence. But internally, it was rotting. The USSR spent a staggering 15 to 20% of its entire economy on the military. This was simply unsustainable. By the 1980s, its state-run economy was a joke. Factories produced useless goods, farms couldn't feed the population, and their technology was decades behind the West. The currency, the ruble, was worthless outside its borders. Then came the final act. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, and Eastern European countries broke free. Just 2 years later, on December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union officially dissolved. It didn't fall to an invasion or a war, but imploded from within due to economic failure. From Spain to Britain to the USSR, the story has a familiar ring. Overspending, debt, economic decay, and then the inevitable decline. History gives us a roadmap, a pattern for how great powers fall. Could the United States be following that same well-trodden path to implosion, perhaps as soon as 2025? Let's look at the stages. Stage 1, military overextension. The U.S. has around 750 military bases in 80 countries, with troops in 150 nations. It defends NATO, Japan, and South Korea, while countering major global powers. The budget? A staggering $850 billion, more than the next 10 countries combined. But this massive force is stretched incredibly thin. Stage 2, currency debasement. Since the dollar became a fiat currency in 1971, its value has been untethered. The money supply has exploded by 400% since the year 2000 alone. The result? The dollar has lost about 98% of its original purchasing power. What used to cost $1 now costs 50. Stage 3, the debt spiral. We're looking at a national debt of $36 trillion and climbing fast. Just the interest payments on this debt are approaching $1 trillion every single year. And with persistent deficits, that number only goes up. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity. The American manufacturing base has been hollowed out. The country now imports $800 billion more than it exports annually. This has created a dangerous dependence on foreign supply chains, even for critical goods like medicine and advanced military technology. Stage 5, social decay. Trust in our core institutions is at an all-time low. We see rising crime, homelessness, and a tragic epidemic of drug overdoses. Fertility rates have collapsed below replacement levels, and political division feels more intense than ever. Stage 6, early signs of reserve currency loss. This is a big one. Even America's allies are starting to diversify their reserves. Central banks worldwide are buying gold at a record pace. Nations like China, Russia, and even Saudi Arabia are actively making moves to trade outside the US dollar system. Which brings us to stage 7, collapse. History shows us this part isn't gradual, it's sudden. A debt crisis can trigger a currency crisis, which ignites a political crisis, leading to a rapid implosion. A superpower can become a cautionary tale almost overnight. We've seen this movie before, 3 times in recent history, in fact. Spain in its golden age, the British Empire on which the sun never set, the Soviet Union. Each one thought they were different. Each one believed they were the exception to the rule. And each one was proven wrong. America is not exempt from the laws of economics and history. The math doesn't lie, and the pattern doesn't bend for claims of exceptionalism. There might still be time to avoid the worst outcome, but it would require a monumental effort to recognize the path we're on, to reform our systems, to rebuild our productive capacity, and to restore trust before the clock runs out. History is watching, and its lesson is clear. Empires often die in the exact same way. Thanks for watching. If you found this perspective valuable, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the forces shaping our world.